Hi everyone, and welcome back to Roving Reality Podcast.
I'm Megan.
I'm Maddie.
I'm Lilly, and we will be your hosts throughout this journey of self-discovery.
This week we are going to be doing a mini-series about the forces that have shaped our past and present selves. We have interviews with people who are young and old, in high school and out of high school, from our very own evergreen state, and from different places around the world. Each and every person is unique, and they all have different stories that we are going to share with you.
How would you describe yourself right now? What about 10 years ago? What about 10 years from now?
What changed you?
To find the answer to this intimidating question, we first looked to studies on the topic of how people change. Megan, what did you discover?
Well, one of the only long-term studies that's been done on this topic was a personality analysis by professors at the University of Edinburgh. This study investigated how character traits shifted as people grew older by means of a personality survey given to subjects in their teens and then to those same subjects again in their 70s.
Also, when the data was compared, a person's older self bore almost no resemblance to their younger self's personality. The study's author said that it was almost as if the second test had been given to completely different people.
So you're saying that people almost never stay the same as they were when they were a teen?
Exactly. However, this data wasn't completely inconclusive, so that's why I wanted to go into our communities and examine whether people were really changing as much as the study thought, and what specifically was changing them.
I thought I would not live in the U.S.
I thought I was going to be kind and smart and really hardworking.
I thought I'd be a gym teacher.
I definitely thought I would dance on Broadway for years.
All these people are saying that they turned out different from how they thought, but what exactly changed them?
I don't think there's a single factor that shapes us into who we are, but I found that many people can pinpoint a cultural or social interaction, an academic experience, or a current event that directed them toward the path they're on today.
Yeah, I agree with that. But also, what if humans are just destined to change?
Wow, that's a really interesting point, Megan. Maybe our ambitions and our personalities are just meant to change as we grow older.
Yeah, that sounds likely to me, and it's certainly in line with the results of a study I read the other day in the Journal of Social Forces. It said that only 6% of us end up in the jobs we aspire to have in our young teens.
Did it give a reason for that?
Yeah, it said that money for education or lack thereof could play a factor, but that it more often appears to be that our aspirations are just simply changing as we grow older. However, I'm still curious as to why this is.
Well, when I talked to Rich Birmingham, a 65-year-old lawyer, I found out that some of these changes could be due to experiences in school and with academics. What did your high school self think you were going to be like when you were 65?
See, my high school self probably thought I'd be dead at age 65. And that was way too old to even consider. But in high school, I thought I was going to be an architect and build houses for the poor.
However, due to Rich's experiences in college, he ended up becoming a tax and employee benefits lawyer, which is very different from his childhood dream of an architect.
I went to college. I took drafting in architecture school, decided I hated it. So I quit that. I went through a bunch of other majors. I was going to be a doctor till I took chemistry. I was going to be a computer scientist until I took that class. I was going to be a mathematician until I took calculus. And so I ended up with the things that I could pass, which were political science.
And it turned out that this political science class was what sparked his passion for law.
So when I took political science, I took a class in civil liberties during the summer because I had flunked calculus. And I really liked civil liberties, and I read, the Miranda decision and some of the cases that, people were studying in high school, Gideon versus Wainwright, right to counsel. And I got really interested in civil liberties and protecting people's rights. So at that moment, I decided that I was going to be a lawyer, and that's what I became.
That's a great story, Megan. It's really interesting to hear how big of an impact academic experiences can have on our lives.
Yeah, I personally never expected that any class could change someone's life so much.
For sure. And even though he arrived at his career at almost a matter of default, it sure seems to have worked out well for him.
Yeah, I agree, but some people's lives change not because of decisions they made, but because of decisions made for them. Take 47-year-old Tina DeJong, for example. For her, life in one spot never seemed like an option because her father was an engineer who worked on pipelines all over the world.
I moved from Indonesia, Jakarta, Indonesia, to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And that was a sea change for me because I was almost 16 at the time and didn't want to move. So I came to the U.S. at that age with a very negative attitude.
However, as she grew older, her attitude changed.
When I was in high school, I worried about being tied down to any one place. I wanted to move a lot. Now I'm pretty comfortable here in Seattle. I like it. I like having that home base, so that's quite different.
Wow. Moving from Indonesia to Oklahoma, that must have been quite the culture shock for her.
Yeah, it definitely was. Here, I'll play for you what she told me about it.
So my high school in Indonesia was very, very diverse. We had 49 nationalities. We had kids from everywhere. So it was just a very different place from Oklahoma that's very homogenous, very conservative, deep in the Bible Belt. Yeah. Indonesia obviously is a Muslim country. In Oklahoma, they were afraid of Muslims. So very different places.
These frequent moves to new environments and new cultures gave Tina a sense of curiosity of the world, which she still has today. She loves to explore, and she thinks that's a result of moving around the world throughout her childhood. She never thought that she would live in one place for as long as she has lived in Seattle, 16 years. In fact, she never even thought she would live in the U.S.
So without all these different cultural experiences, Tina really wouldn't be the person she is today, would she?
No, I don't think so. Maddie, didn't you have a similar experience when you moved from Atlanta to Seattle during your junior year?
Yeah, basically what happened is in Georgia, my freshman and sophomore year were not exactly the best years there. My old school in Atlanta, Georgia, was basically a school where they give you a handout and a textbook, and they were kind of like, figure it out for yourself. And with that came a lot of struggle, and I didn't get as good of grades as I have gotten here at Roosevelt.
So moving really helped you define yourself as a student and figure out your learning style.
Yes, for sure. And I also think it helped me a lot socially as well. When I got here to Roosevelt, I joined the cross-country team. And when school started, I had friends who were from cross-country who were in my classes. And through that, I branched out and met more people, went to a bunch of games and stuff, and met people there. And just kind of was meeting friends of friends and becoming friends with them and everything. So I definitely feel like the social aspect here is better for me.
Well, I'm glad your move made so many beneficial changes in your life. Overall, how would you describe the experience, like in a sentence?
Best change in my life.
Well, I'm certainly glad you moved here. However, there are other factors that can change a person.
Yeah, I completely agree. Megan, didn't you get some interesting answers about that in one of your interviews?
Yeah, I did. When talking to high school student Celine Chong, who's also a first-generation immigrant of Korean parents, I discovered that the social aspects of high school have really been what's changed her. She had always been very bright, but when she got to high school, she started receiving negative attention for her good grades, something she hadn't previously experienced.
My grades didn't mean anything. In fact, they just made me more like outcasted because people were like, you're literally just bragging to us at this point. Even though I never told them my grades, they would just look at my paper and see them.
Unfortunately, this experience resulted in a very negative impact on her self-esteem.
I just lost so much confidence. So I used to be very like bubbly and stuff, but once I hit high school, people started saying like how quiet they thought I was at first and stuff like that. And I used to just be so sure of myself, and like I took like the job test or whatever, and like it said I would be like a CEO and stuff like that, and now it says I could be like a priest, like a social worker. So like I think it just goes to show how like maybe I grew, maybe I changed.
That's really powerful. It definitely seems like she's in the process of undergoing a lot of major changes in her life, and that's to be expected. I mean, she's only in high school.
Yes, I agree. It is sad to see how negatively some of the social aspects of high school have impacted her, though. But despite them, she has still managed to have a lot of positive experiences as well.
That's good to hear. So you've seen how academic, social interactions, and cultural experiences can impact us. But are there any other things that can cause a person's life to change?
Personally, I think one more big factor that we haven't touched yet is current events. I believe that what's going on in the world can definitely change us and impact our lives in major ways. Just take Maddie Hoffman, for example. Maddie's a high school student and a member of our podcast team who is here with us right now to talk about how the recent election of Trump changed her life.
So basically, I was a sophomore, I'm a junior now, and I was asked who I would support in the 2016 election for the school newspaper. And I hesitantly said Trump. That was not reflected in the newspaper. It said that I was a confident Trump supporter, I believe were the words. So I was a little bit misrepresented.
How did that impact your life? I bet it took a toll being that Seattle's such a liberal city.
It definitely forced me to have tough conversations with people and stand up for myself and have my beliefs tested, and that ended up being a really good thing. And it's been my mission, I think, at Roosevelt Sense to sort of get people to use that passion in a productive way. So not, yelling at people or tearing down their posters or anything like that, but just having conversations. I've had some great conversations where I've learned a bunch and made incredible friends and connections, and I've had some conversations that have not gone so well, but with everyone I feel like I'm learning more about myself and learning more about what I believe in.
That's really great that you were able to find some positives in that tough situation. Did you take anything else from that experience?
Be kind to people, listen. You don't know what they're going through, you don't know what their background is, and why they think the things that they believe, because it's so easy to vilify, it's a lot harder to listen.
Wow, I'm really impressed with all the positivity you were able to have throughout that whole situation, Maddie. It sounded like it ended up really changing you for the better, and you become a lot more tolerant person because of it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's definitely changed how I navigate this world and my outlook on life.
Our findings seem to conclude that we change over time in a variety of ways and for a variety of reasons, whether intentional or not. Other studies have pointed this out throughout the years, so these results were expected. What wasn't expected was the way people described themselves when we talked to them. When asked, "What were you like in high school?" or "What did you think you'd be like at your age?" people mostly talked about their current jobs, the one they had, or the ones that they wish they had.
That's a good point, Maddie. Now that you pointed that out, I definitely think that's true.
So what you guys are saying is that people tend to define themselves in terms of their occupation?
Exactly.
So why are all these people talking about their jobs? What makes this such an important part of themselves?
Well, according to CNN, Americans work on average 34.4 hours a week. So, since Americans spend a lot of their days at work, it makes their occupation a defining aspect of their personality.
So how do people out of the workplace describe themselves then?
I think listening to how 7th grader Haley Hoffman talks about herself could answer that question, Megan.
Funny, sweet, well-liked, good reputation, smart.
Haley isn't describing herself in terms of what she does, but rather in terms of who she is. So while the paths in our lives change as we grow up, so does how we view ourselves, as we lack the time for reflection and spend our days confined in cubicles.
Yeah, and to add on to that, we live in a materialistic culture that grooms us to be diligent employees. But at one point in our lives, we saw ourselves as much more.
So, what I'm getting from this is that we need to consider the different aspects of our lives and how we respond to them more carefully, because those decisions are what shapes us, for better or for worse. The classes we take, the cultures we experience, the friends we associate with, and the involvement we have with different current events, these will ultimately be the things that change us and our course in life, so we need to be aware of them in order to stay true to ourselves.
Yes, I completely agree with that, and I also think it's important to remember that as much as how we change may seem out of our control and in the hands of the universe, we do have some control over how we shape ourselves, and who we become should be so much more than where we work. Otherwise, what's the point?
As Leo Tolstoy, the famous Russian writer, once said, "Everyone thinks of changing the world, and no one thinks of changing himself." So, perhaps the most impactful way to change our course in life is to look inside ourselves for answers instead of to the universe.
So in summary, there are always going to be change. The world is never stagnant, but it's how we react to that change that should define us.
Exactly, and not understanding where we belong in the world is just a part of being human. In fact, I think Celine really expressed this best.
I can't really sit down and think about who I am as a person, whom I'm becoming, and how to change that course. Identity is really hard because Asian American, there's not really an identity set for that. So I either have to pick Asian or American, because Celine as a person is not really an identity right now.
It seems that we don't lose this feeling of confusion surrounding our identity when we grow older, but when we change so much throughout our lives that it is to be expected. It's okay to feel as if you don't perfectly know who you are or where you're heading, because most people don't. You just have to wait and see where life takes you and accept that you'll go through a lot of changes before you get where you want to be.
Okay, well, I think that's a good place for us to leave it, Maddie, but make sure to tune in next week for our second installment of our mini-series.
Thanks for listening.